Greetings! Michael Didier here, and I'm glad you're there. We're continuing our halak in Torah, our journey in Torah. Ooh, I love the way that leads to life. We're discovering so many interesting things these days, and I'm so glad you're here to share them with me. Abraham, what an amazing guy this is. Abram is when we first meet him. He's 75 years old. It's where we first meet him in Torah. Remember, we met him when he was born in Yasher. But in Torah, we are introduced to Abram. Well, I should say, really, we meet Abram in chapter 11. Remember, it says that he's born, and it almost makes him look like the oldest one in this household, because it names him first, then Haran, then Nahor. Or maybe the other way around, him, Nahor, Haran. And then it talks about him taking Sarai, as his wife, and Nahor taking Milcah. So, really, that's the first time we're introduced. We don't know it, but Abram is about 50 years old at that point. Well, now here's 25 years later, he's introduced in Torah. And I think it's really interesting, and this is what I wanted to point out to you today, is that Yahovah promised to give, here it is, verse 7. Yahovah promised to give Abram seed the land. He says, to your seed I will give this land. At the beginning of this chapter, he said, leave your father, your land. Leave your land. Where is it? There it is. Leave your land. It says country. No, leave your land. He had land in Haran. His family had land in Haran. Leave that land. That's your, most people can't even fathom leaving their land, leaving their property, and going someplace else. Oh, it's what I've worked for my whole life. But Yahovah told him to leave your country, your family, your father's house, and he's going to show you a new land. There it is, to a land that I will show you, and I will make you a great nation. He doesn't even have a kid yet. Well, that's what we're going to talk about right now. The seed. It says descendants. When you think descendants, you think man descendants and lady descendants. But that's not what Torah talks about. When Torah talks about descendants, we're talking about male seed. Only the males have the seed. So from here, remember, we went to 13, where he goes down to Egypt. 14 is when we have the battle. He saves Lot. 15 now is when Yahovah comes to him in a vision. And in that vision, he tells Abram that, here it is right here, his seed, there it is, 15. Then he said to Abram, know certainly that your seed will be Ger. Here it is, it's on the right. Let's read it on the right. Then he said to Abram, no for certain. It uses that same word twice. What was that? Yada. Two different forms. That shows the certainty of what it is that he's saying. He's repeating himself. No. That your seed will be strangers in a land that's not theirs. Hear that? He promised to give the land to the seed. But he says, now, 3 years later, know certainly that your seed, who's his seed? He doesn't have any seed yet. He's not going to take or even create Ishmael for another 8 years. And Ishmael's not the seed we're talking about. That seed's not going to come for another 23 years. Wowzers. Know that your seed will be strangers in a land that's not theirs, and will work for them, and they will afflict them 400 years. Well, we saw with the week that we did this, we talked about the 430-year prophecy. We saw that the day that Isaac was born was the day that we came out of Egypt. What does that tell us? The seed, the spiritual seed, Abram's spiritual seed, was born at Passover. Well, let's confirm that, because in 17 then, remember 16 was when he had Ishmael, 17 then is when Yahovah promises in a vision again that the seed's going to be born at the Moed, the time of life the next year. Oh my God, are you guys seeing what's going on here? This will change your life if you open your eyes and understand how the spiritual seed is born. It's born at Passover, after the Ger has come out from among the country of his birth. We're talking about men. Don't forget, we're talking about men. So, this was a vision. Now, in 18, we saw last week what happened. Now, Yahovah himself comes to Abram and tells him exactly the same thing 3 days later. Oh my goodness! But we found that Yahovah came as what? 3 Enoshim, 3 men. Well, it wasn't Yahovah at all. It was his shalach, his sent ones, the men who speak for him. What they say, he does. What he says, they say. Well, understanding who the shalach is changes everything. You know, I've heard people say, well, don't you know this was Jesus that was there at that time? Oh, brother, don't go there. It's going to retard your brain. No, this is Yahovah's shalach, the men who speak for him. What they do, Yahovah did. What they said, Yahovah says. The decisions they make are the decisions that Yahovah makes. That's what the shalach is. And if Yeshua, really, if he ever did exist, he was a shalach. He was a sent one to turn men back to Yahovah, not to die for anybody's sins. That's all created by the Catholic Church. Nonsense. It doesn't matter. Yeshua can't change anything. He's a man. Get over it. Learn the way that leads to life. Know that Yahovah doesn't change. His word endures forever, and it's all about the time of life, the Moed, which now is called the Passover. Well, this is where we left off. So they said, again, this is the servants coming to Abram. They're going to tell him exactly the same thing that Yahovah told him in the vision, that this child was going to be born. Here it is. And they said to him, where is Sarah your wife? So he said, here in the tent. And he said, I will certainly return to you according to what? The time of life. And behold, Sarah, your woman, shall have a son. Now skip down to 14. Now we get the time of life at the appointed time. Is anything too hard for Yahovah? At the appointed time. Look at it, he says I. This is one of the men talking. One of the Enoshim. But it says I. See how we confuse Yahovah? Yahovah, Spirit Elohim, he doesn't have a mouth. He can't walk away as he does at the end of this chapter. No, this is the shalach speaking for him. Is anything too hard for you? Look at, he's even using Yahovah in the third person. At the appointed time, I will return to you. Who's the I? I think it's Shem. According to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. Wow. It's going to be from that son's seed that the mighty nation is going to be. And this is, remember, he's 99 right now. He's at the time of life. Jehovah appears to his people at the Sabbaths, at the new moons, at the feast days. And here it appears that Jehovah is appearing to him on the Moed. At this time next year, Sarah shall have a son. All right. So we went from here. We finished 18 last week. Remember, it was the Shalaks going down to Sodom to do what? Let's remind ourselves of this, because we're going to see this today. I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry against it. People are outcrying, Yehovah, help us! Yehovah, save us! Yehovah, my daughter was killed! Yehovah, I was beaten! My belongings were stolen! These are the people that are crying out to Yehovah. I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry against it that has come to me, and if not, I will know. Then it says, and then the men turned away from there and went toward Sodom. But Yehovah still stood before Yehovah. I'm guessing Shem. Okay, so from there we went to Yasher. Ooh, we had some really interesting discoveries in Yasher. Here it is. And what we saw, we did it right here. Abraham was 91 years old. See that at the top of the page? And it says the Kittim seed made war with Tubal's seed. Oh my goodness. You know, for years I said, where the blazes, I'm being nice, is Kittim? Why are we being told about Kittim? Why is Kittim important in this? And you know, I just couldn't figure it out. But then one day, actually it was just a few weeks ago, well, maybe it's a month ago, maybe a little bit more, but not long ago, we saw that Kittim lived by the river, here it is right here, by the river Tabru. Tabru! Where's the river Tabru? Well, it was in Italia, it said earlier on in this book. And I realized that we are talking about Rome. Rome! Did you hear that? Do you think maybe we're being told about Rome because all the governments of the earth are founded on the same structure that Rome was founded on? Senators, representatives, armies, all of that is going on. But look what it said about Rome. This was all about Rome and Tubal having a war. Here, let me just read this to you because I think this was fascinating. This is generally thought of as a myth. We're talking about the rape of the Sabines. The Romans, because the daughters of Tubal would not give their daughters, remember the daughters were so beautiful, the most beautiful daughters in the earth. Kings and princes would come and get their women from the daughters of Tubal. But look what it says now about the Romans. This is generally thought of as a myth in secular history. This event occurred when the patriarch Abram was in his 90s. Well, this Yasher says 91. Great. I love it when it agrees. There was even a movie made on this with the title Rape of the Sabines. Carrie and I tried to find that movie this week, couldn't find it. Shortly after King Romulus, we found the cover, but we couldn't play the movie. Shortly after Romulus, King Romulus, remember Rome, Romulus, this is who we're talking about, Catim seed, founded Rome. This battle took place. In order for Rome to grow quickly, a decree was issued that any criminals that would come to colonize Rome would be declared a free man and made a citizen of Rome. Oh my gosh! Do you hear what's going on? You can't be a representative and a senator of Rome unless you're a citizen, but you get to be a citizen if you're a criminal. Well, doesn't that sound a bit like what we have going on right now in the earth? Ah, my goodness. This attracted a lot of criminals and caused the sons of Tubal not to intermarry or trade with them. We don't want to be with you. You're wicked men. Daniel 11:30 makes the prophecy about the ships of Catim. That's what you see, ships of Catim. Sometimes they say ships of Cyprus. Why does it say Cyprus? It clearly says Catim in the Hebrew, but they changed it to Cyprus. Why? Are they trying to throw us off? Well, look what it says. The Hebrew Old Testament version has Catim, but in the Greek Septuagint version says ships of Rome. Well, this is all very interesting stuff to see how this comes through. And now I'm a little bit more interested. I was going to skip this whole section. In fact, I had a note at the beginning. I don't think it's there anymore. I had a note right here saying skip to verse 16. I was going to skip it altogether. I'm so glad I didn't. So here's where we're picking up today. And it's a little bit of a review because this is where Abram was in chapter 17 when he got his vision. Remember, the day that he got his vision is the day that he got his name changed, is the day that he got circumcised. It's the day that bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh got her name changed. And then after this, Yahovah circumcised all the men of his household. Those born in his house, those bought with money, and I think the ones who joined himself to them. They may be considered the ones born in his house. And of course, he was first, and Ishmael was second, then everybody else. Ooh, so interesting that he is setting the trend, if you will. You know what? You can't teach where you won't go. You can't do it. And this is why we have teachers right now. They're not going to teach you about another kingdom. Why? Because they won't go to the other kingdom. They love the kingdom of their birth, and they try to tell you to obey the laws of the land. The laws of the land. Oh, my word. Father, forgive us. They actually think that's in the scriptures. It's a doctrine of men that they have adopted. And people think it's in the scriptures. Let me show you what Yahovah says. This is Leviticus 18. Look at how he starts. Speak to Israel's seed and say to them, I'm on verse 2, I am Yahovah thy Elohim. According to the doings of the land of Egypt, where thou goes, where thou dwelt. I'm going to make it use. You shall not do. Hear that? According to the doings of the land in Egypt where you dwelt, you shall not do. According to the doings of the land of Canaan where I'm bringing you, you shall not do. Look at what he says. Nor shall you walk in their ordinances. What? What? I thought we were supposed to obey the laws of the land. You shall observe my judgments and keep my ordinances to walk in them. I am Yahovah, your Elohim. You shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments. I love it when he says, my statutes and my judgments. Remember, the lawmakers of the land, the Elohim of the land, the lawmakers and the judges, the lawmakers make statutes and ordinances. For the judges make judgments. Yahovah says we're supposed to follow his statutes and his judgments. See, this is why we got to leave the kingdom of our first birth and join ourselves to Yahovah's called out people. Look what he finishes. You shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments, which, if a man, what is the man here? Ish, I'm sure. No, ha-adam. Oh, cool. Ha-adam. Doesn't even say Adam. It says ha-adam. We're talking about men, not ladies. Men keep his statutes, his judgments, his ordinances. Oh, I know it blows people's minds when they hear this. They can't even fathom it. But you know, you'll never see in the Torah where it talks about a Zadik Isha. It's always a Zadik Ish. Why is that? Because women are not told to keep Yahovah's commandments, statutes, and judgments. They're told to keep their man's statutes, judgments, and ordinances. What does it say? Your desire shall be for your man, and he shall rule over you. Yahovah never talks to a woman unless she's in trouble. She doesn't go into his house unless she's in trouble. When her husband brings her in and says, this woman has betrayed me, or I believe she has, Yahovah never spoke to Hava until after she had disobeyed her man, what her man told her. Because he told the man, of all the trees of the garden you may eat, but the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you shall not eat it. He told her, but she added to the words of her man, and it got them both in trouble. Then Yahovah spoke to her. All right, let's go back to Yasher. Here's where we're going to begin today. 25 minutes. Boy, I have these long introductions. I hope they help you. I hope they help you to see things that maybe you had forgotten, or maybe help put things together. It says, and Abram, the son of Terah, was now 99 years old. At that time, Yahovah appeared to him, and he said to him, I will make my, what did it say last week we learned? My cutting. A covenant is a cutting. A berati. Berati is my cutting. That's what the T says. The E at the end of that. The Yod at the end of it. Berati. Berati. A berit is a cutting. So my berit, my cutting between me and thee. And I will greatly multiply thy seed. And this is the berit which I make between me and thee. The cutting that I make between me and thee. What is the cutting? There it is. This is the cutting. Our eyes should perk up. What is the cutting? Here it is. That every male, they add the word child. Every male among you shall be circumcised, thou and thy seed after thee. Now it's done to talk about the child. At 8 days old shall it be circumcised. Shall he, it. We're going to talk about a male child is the it. What, they don't want to say he? Well, can you circumcise a woman? Boy, sometimes you just got to wonder what it is that they're saying. My goodness. At 8 days old, he shall be circumcised. And this cutting shall be in your flesh for an everlasting cutting. Cutting. You can't have a covenant without a cutting. Ooh, so interesting. And now, therefore, thy name shall no more be called Abram, but Abraham. And thy woman shall no more be called Sarai, but Sarah. Remember, we were talking about Abram. Abram was, how'd it go? exalted father, Avram, Avram. But when we add the H to it, the Hey, Aleph, Bet, Resh, Hey, Mem, as that Hey, it puts it into a new dimension. Now we're talking about the father of an exalted people. The spiritually born seed is what we're talking about. And we saw last week where we compared Abram's seed with the seed of the earth, contrasting one with the other. One nation dwells in heaven following the statutes, judgments, and ordinances of Jehovah. The other nation, the people of the earth, I think that's what they were using, people at that time, the people of Haaretz are following their kingdoms, their kings, their Elohim. Well, that was the end of this chapter. Now, just like the last chapter, no, it's not like the last chapter. Because that's the vision. See this? This is the vision that Jehovah had. I will bless you both. I will multiply your seed after you, that you shall become a great nation, and kings shall come from you. Now, in Torah, it continues, chapter 17, with what we're going to see here in 18. And then 18 begins with him sitting at his tent in the heat of the day. And he sees three men coming towards him. He knows them. He goes running to them. Let's find out. And Abram rose and did all that Elohim commanded him. And he took the men of his household. It has to be the ish of his household, not taking the ladies, and those bought with money. And he circumcised them as Jehovah had commanded him. Well, look at this. This is, I'm going to put this in up here so you can see it. He says, I want you to see the one that is right here in Exodus. It says, but every man's servant who is bought for money, when you have circumcised him, then he may eat it. Do you see how 17 fits with Exodus? 12:48 says, if a stranger dwells with you and wishes to keep the covenant, I forget exactly what the wording is. He says, let all his males be circumcised, and then draw near and keep it, and he shall become an Ezra. Oh my goodness, the Ger becomes an Ezra in one day. Guys, that is how a nation is going to be born in a day. It's going to happen in the future. It hasn't happened yet. That Israel, the state that everybody says, pray for Israel. You are deluded. You're praying for the wrong people. You're supposed to be praying for me and people like me who have left the kingdom of their birth and entered into the covenant and became Israel, the Ezra men. Oh, man, we are so deluded because we got teachers who won't leave the kingdom of their birth. They talk about the children of Israel and don't understand we're talking about Israel's seed. Shame on them. He says, woe to you shepherds who destroy the sheep of my pasture. You have driven them away. He says, I will attend to you according to the evil of your doings. They're not promoting a kingdom. They're saying it's okay to be in the kingdom of your birth. Destruction is imminent for them. They don't even know it. Verse 2. And there was not one left whom he did not circumcise. And Abram and his son Ishmael were circumcised in the flesh of their foreskin. It says 13 years old was Ishmael when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. Well, this is what day? Just before the time of life. 3 days before the time of life. Because look what it says right now. And see, this is where the next chapter begins, but we don't understand it when he says he was sitting at the door of his tent in the heat of the day. We don't understand that he was hurting. He was sitting in the door in the heat of the day. Well, here it is right here. And the third day, Abraham went out of his tent. You know, did he live in a tent or did he live in a house? Shoot, he's been here for 22 years. 21 years. From 78 to 99. He didn't build a house in that amount of time. He's still living in a tent. I wonder. It goes back and forth in Yasher house tents. Well, let's continue. Look at what it says. And in the third day, Abraham went out of his tent and sat at the door to enjoy the heat of the sun during the pain of his flesh. Oh, I get it. This is why I always say, oh, I get it. 18 follows 17. Closely. Like 3 days later. Here it is. Here's the beginning of 18. Then Jehovah appeared to him by the terebinth tree. The terebinth tree. The oak. The oak of Mamre. The big oak. He was sitting in the tent door in the heat of the day. Here, let me do this. Then Jehovah appeared to him by the oak of Mamre. He was sitting in the door in the heat of the day. So he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 Enoshim, 3 men, were coming by him. And he saw them, and he ran from his tent door to meet them. Do you think he just meets every stranger? He runs to when he sees 3 strangers coming towards him, that he just runs to them? No, he knew these men. He recognized these men. I know these men. He goes to see them. Look what he says. He ran from the tent door to meet them and bowed himself to the ground and said, Adonai, my master, if I have found favor in your sight, do not pass by your servant. Come to my house. Come to my tent, whatever it is. And Jehovah appeared to him. It says Jehovah appeared to him. How does Spirit Elohim appear to anybody? I'll tell you, it's all through Torah. He appears to them in a pillar of fire and smoke, if it's him. But if it's not him, he sends a shalach in his place. And that is who he's sending right now, is 3 messengers. Not angels, messengers. Enoshim, men with hands and ears and arms and legs. Just like me. And Jehovah appeared to him, like they call it the plain of Mamre. In the plain of Mamre. It gets translated as terebinth tree. It gets translated as oak. It gets translated as oaks of Mamre. I think it's the oak of Mamre because of some of the things that we saw in Torah and what we're going to see here. It says, and sent 3 of his ministering messengers. Sent. Shalach. Jehovah appeared to him at the oak of Mamre, and Shalach sent 3 of his ministering messengers to visit him. And he was sitting at the door of the tent. And he lifted up his eyes and saw, and lo, 3 men, 3 Enoshim, were coming from a distance. And he rose up and ran to meet them. No, if he doesn't know them, he's hurting. He's sitting at the door of his tent in the heat of the day. Running to these men has got to be uncomfortable. Is he going to just run to any three men that are coming towards him? No, no, no. He's got to know these men. He lifted up his eyes and saw, and lo, three Enoshim were coming from a distance. And he rose up and ran to meet them. And he bowed down to them and brought them into his house. I put, is it possible that Abraham knew these three men? Could they be Shem, Eber, and one other? Is it possible that now Abraham does have a house to dwell in? Look at it, it says house. Brought them into his house, his dwelling. He's been there for 21 years. I would think you'd outgrow your house or your tent if you're going to be in a place permanently. And he said to them, if now I have found favor in your sight, turn in, eat a morsel of bread. And he pressed them, and they turned in, and he gave them water, and they washed their feet, and he placed them under a tree. There's a tree at the door of his tent. Under the tree. He was camped by the tree, the oak of memory. You know, that big oak, the one that survived the flood. This oak's got to be about 700 years old, we figured last week. It survived the flood. The flood was 300 and some odd years ago. And Abram ran and took a calf, tender and good. And he hastened to slaughter it. If you eat it, it's not killed, it's slaughtered. Remember, we got three words. Rashak is murder. Thou shalt not rashak. It's the avenger of blood who kills the rashak. Then Yahovah tells us to kill our enemies. That is the word shakat. We kill our enemies. But when we're talking about something that we're going to eat, it's slaughtered. That's how it always is. It gets missed in the Torah. But if you eat it, it's slaughtered. It's not killed. And gave it, so he killed it, he slaughtered it, and then he gave it to, it says, a young man in Torah. In this one, well, here it is right here. It's not, I didn't put it in there. He gave it to a young man. Well, we don't know that the young man was Eliezer. Except Eliezer, how old would Eliezer be? Eliezer's probably got to be in his 50s. It's funny they're calling him a young man, but I guess compared to Abram, he's a young man. Abram is 99. And Abram came to Sarah into the tent. And he said to her, make ready 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes to cover the pot containing the meats. Sounds like they're making a pot pie, doesn't it? Or maybe dumplings. And she did so. And Abram hastened and brought before them butter and milk, beef and mutton, and gave it before them. I always laugh because remember the Jews, they have this big deal about not eating dairy products with meat. And here's Abraham giving him butter and milk and beef and mutton. And gave it before them to eat before the flesh of the calf was sufficiently done. This is the appetizer. And they did eat. But now look what it says. And when they had done eating, one of them said to him, I will return to thee. I. This is one of the Anoshim talking, but he says I, speaking for who? Yahovah, the Creator. That's right, Carrie. He says, I will return to thee according to the time of life. And Sarah, thy woman, shall have a son. A time of life. It's Passover. Passover is the time that the man, the fallen man, remember, the son of Belial, the new creation, when Ha-Adam fell, there was a new creation created. It's called the seed of Ha-Adam. Ha-Adam's seed. Fallen man doesn't have the glory, doesn't have the honor, doesn't have the immortality that he was created with. But the time of life is when we get it. back. Oh my goodness. It's the time that we become the heir, the spiritual heir of Yahovah, and now can inherit the land. Don't think that any Gentile is going to inherit any land in Yahovah's kingdom. It ain't going to happen. You're deluded. Is anything too hard for Yahovah? At the appointed time, I will return to you according to the time of life. The appointed time is the time of life. The moed is the time of life. And the men, the Enoshim, afterwards departed and went their way to a place which they were sent. So they were on a halak, and they continued their journey after they had visited with Abraham and told him the good news of what was going to happen next year on this very day. Well, now we're going to change gears. What was it that we were going to find out? I've heard the outcry coming to me. This is Yahovah speaking. This was the men. This was his Enoshim that said this. I've heard the outcry. And we're going down to see if it's true. Ooh, I have some things I want to tell you, but I think I want to wait for you to first see what Sodom and Gomorrah was like. You know, there's a lot of sin in this world right now. And a lot of us don't even recognize what sin is. We call things sin that aren't. I can think of a couple things right off the bat. And we call things that aren't sin that are. Did I say that right? We call things sin that aren't sin. And we say things aren't sin that are sin. You follow? It goes both ways. And the reason is because we don't know Yahovah's eternal and unchanging ways. Dare I give you a couple examples? Yeah, you've been in my class for a long time. I'll give you a couple examples. Okay? Oh, I found another one just yesterday. Oh my goodness. How about multiple wives? We call a man taking another woman when he's married to a woman, taking another single woman, adultery. Is that what Yahovah says? No. We're mistaken. Torah says if a man takes another wife, he shall not diminish her food or clothing and marriage rights. He says if you have two wives and they born you two sons, that the first son, even if it's the son of the unloved wife, is going to be the heir, the one who receives the birthright. How about lesbianism? Homosexuality, obviously, in Torah is spoken against. But two women being together, do you find lesbianism in Torah? No, it's not there. The sin of lesbianism is this. Probably you don't want to hear it. They don't have a man in their life, and they need a man in their life. You can't live according to Yahovah's created purpose for a woman without a man in your life. That's why 7 women are going to come to one man in the last days, because they get it now. Duh. No, there's nowhere in Torah where it talks about 2 ladies. How do 2 ladies have sex? No, it's all about the seed. Where the seed goes. The seed can't go to a mother and her daughter. The seed can't go to a woman and her sister. The seed can't go to your daughter's daughter or your son's daughter or your aunt. It's about the seed. Ladies don't have seed. Lesbianism is not a sin. The sin is not having a man in your life. But see, we don't know it. And that's why I say that I think it was Shem and Eber who are going down to Sodom. Why? Because they know what sin is. They're not going to judge it according to the doctrines and traditions of men. They're going to judge it according to what Torah says, what the words of Yahovah says. Remember, Yahovah doesn't change. His word endures forever. It was just codified for us again at Sinai because we'd been in Egypt for so long, we forgot it. Many of us did. Remember, the Levites never worked for Pharaoh. I think they learned Yahovah's ways and kept his ways. There was righteous men during those times. Well, now we're going to talk about Sodom and Gomorrah. Listen to what it says. This is something that we don't know. It's long. We probably won't even finish it today, but I'm going to do my best to do that. In those days, all the people of Sodom, we're talking about men people. We're not talking about lady people. Follow along here. All the people of Sodom and Gomorrah and the whole 5 cities were exceedingly wicked and sinful against Yahovah. A lady can't be sinful against Yahovah because she's not told to obey Yahovah. She's told to obey her man. Obey your man, ladies, and you will survive. Just like Abigail did. Abigail was going to lay down her life for Nabal. When David came to kill him, she said, "Let his sin fall on me." No, she was willing to preserve her man because she was laying down her life for even a wicked man. Wow, so much to see. Exceedingly wicked and sinful against Yahovah. And they provoked Yahovah with their abominations. And they strengthened in aging abominably and scornfully before Yahovah. And their wickedness and crimes were in those days great before Yahovah. Let's find out what they were. And they had in their land a very extensive valley, about half a day's walk. And in it there were fountains of water, and a great deal of herbage surrounding the water. And all the people of Sodom and Gomorrah went there 4 times in the year with their wives. The people are men. They're coming with their wives, their women, and their children, and all belonging to them. Who would be all belonging to them? How about their servants? Male servants, female servants. And they rejoiced there with timbrel and dance 4 times a year. What times of year do you think they were coming? No, it has nothing to do with Passover. It has to do with sun worship. The summer and the winter solstice, and the spring and the autumn equinox. See, this is what's going on when the messengers come down to Sodom. These men have been doing this right here, what we're going to read about, that very day. Easter, the spring equinox, and Passover coincided. It's happened this year. I think it was this year. I don't keep track of Easter, but was it last year? Yeah, okay, Carrie says last year. Doesn't matter. They coincide periodically. They're rejoicing with their wives, their children, and all belonging to them. And look what it says. And in the time of rejoicing, look at, they call it the time of rejoicing. Spring's here. The days are getting longer. We call it the time of life. And in the time of rejoicing, they would all rise and lay hold of their neighbors' women. It says wives, women. There is no word for wife in Torah. And some the virgin daughters of his neighbor, and they enjoyed them. And each man saw his woman and daughter in the hands of his neighbor and did not say a word. The neighbor taking your wife is adultery. Taking your virgin daughter, look what it says. But if this thing is true, remember, your daughters played the harlot in your house, and you gave her to another man, and he came back and says, hey, this girl's not a virgin. Well, this is what it says. But if the thing is true, and the evidence of her virginity was not found for the young woman, no blood on the covers, then they shall bring out the young woman to the door of her father's house. And the men of the city, the men of the city, the men of the city shall stone her to death with stones, because she has done a disgraceful thing in Israel, to play the harlot in her father's house. So you shall put away the evil from among you. Play the harlot in her father's house. Isn't this exactly what's going on in the world today? On the Family Channel. The Family Channel. We've got young women in their teens, early teens, some of them, 15, 14, having sex and having it be encouraged. We've got homosexuality. We've got cross-dressing on the Family Channel. This is what we're talking about. And they did so from morning to night. And afterwards returned each man to his house, his dwelling, and each woman to her tent. Dwelling, tent? What's going on here? So they always did 4 times a year. This is what's going on. It was at this time in our story, they are doing the spring equinox. This explains why Lot was concerned. Here, let me do this. This explains why Lot was concerned about the messengers. Why they had unleavened bread with the messengers that night, and why the men from the city that came for the messengers and then with Lot came for the messengers and then with Lot were so aggressive. They were out of their mind. It was during their celebration. The spring equinox and the Passover must have been going on at the same time. This is what's going on. Also, when a stranger, so now we're going to change the tone of our story again. He's going to give us another example. This is the first example. They're doing adultery. They're celebrating sun god worship. This has all been reported to Yehovah. Go down and see if this is exactly what's going on. And if not, I will know. Also, when a stranger came into their city and brought goods which he had purchased with a view to dispose of there, the people of these cities would assemble men. These cities, not just Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and probably even Zor. The little city. The people of these cities would assemble, men, women, children, young and old, and go to the man and take his goods by force, giving a little to each man until there was an end to all the goods of the owner which he had brought into the land. And the owner of the goods quarreled with them, saying, "What is this work which you have done to me?" Then they would approach him one by one, and each would show him the little which he took, and taunt him, saying, "I only took that little which thou didst give me," bearing false witness also. So we got stealing, we got bearing false witness, got all kinds of things going on here. And when he heard this, are we doing this today? Of course we're doing this today. And when he heard this from them all, he would arise and go from them in sorrow and bitterness of soul. And they would arise and go after him and drive him out of the city with a great noise and tumult. He says, this is Yahuwah speaking through his agents, I will go down now and see whether they have done according to the outcry against it that has come to me, and if not, I will know. Here's another example. And there was a man from the country of Elam. Remember, Elam was the first or second son of Shem, who was leisurely going on the road, seated upon his ass, which carried a fine mantle of diverse colors. And the mantle, this is a cloak, was bound with a cord upon his ass. Must have been something very valuable. And the man was on his journey passing through the street of Sodom, when the sun set in the evening, and he remained there in order to abide during the night. But no one would let him into his house. And at that time there was in Sodom a wicked and mischievous man. Oh, go figure. One skillful to do evil, and his name was Hadad. And he lifted up his eyes and saw the traveler in the street of the city, and he came to him and said, Whence comes thou, and whither dost thou go? And the man said, I am a traveler from Hebron. Remember Hebron, that's the home city of Abram. I'm a traveler from Hebron. I'm traveling from Hebron to Elam, where I belong. And as I passed, the sun set, and no one would suffer me to enter his house, though I had bread and water, and also straw and provender for my ass. And I'm short of nothing. I just want a place to stay. And Hadad answered and said to him, All that thou shalt want shall be supplied by me, but in the street thou shalt not abide all night. And Hadad brought him to his house. Sounds like a nice guy, doesn't he? And he took off the mantle from the ass with the cord and brought them into his house. And he gave the ass straw and provender. Provender, that's the grain that he's going to eat. Well, the traveler ate and drank in Hadad's house, and he abode there that night. In the morning the traveler rose up early to continue his journey, when Hadad said to him, Wait, comfort thy heart with a morsel of bread, and then go. And the man did so, and he remained with him, and they both ate and drank together during the day. When the man rose up to go, and Hadad said, Behold, now the day is declining. Thou hadst better remain all night, that thy heart may be comforted. And he pressed him, and so he did tarry there all night. And on the second day he rose up early to go away, when Hadad pressed him, saying, Comfort thy heart with a morsel of bread, and then go. And he remained and ate with him also a second day. And then the man rose up to continue his journey. And Hadad said to him, Behold, the day is declining. Remain with me to comfort thy heart. Then in the morning rise up early and go thy way. And the man would not remain, but rose and saddled his ass. And whilst he was saddling his ass, the wife of Hadad said to her husband, Behold, this man has remained with us for 2 days, eating and drinking, and he has given us nothing. And now shall he go from us without giving anything? And Hadad said to her, Be silent. And the man saddled his ass to go, and he asked Hadad to give him the cord and mantle to tie upon his ass. And Hadad said to him, What sayest thou? And he said to him, That thou, my lord, shalt give me the cord and the mantle made from diverse colors, which thou didst conceal with thee in thy house, to take care of. And Hadad answered the man, saying, This is the interpretation of thy dream. You know you're in trouble when you get something like this. The cord which thou didst see means that thy life will be lengthened out like a cord. And having seen the mantle colored with many sorts of colors, this is why we're talking about diverse colors, means that thou shalt have a vineyard in which thou wilt plant trees of all fruits. And the traveler answered, saying, No, not so, Adonai. He's calling him Adonai. Not so, my master. For I was awake when I gave thee the cord, and also the mantle woven with different colors, which thou didst take off the ass to put them by for me. And Hadad answered and said, Surely I have told thee the interpretation of thy dream, and it is a good dream. Mrs. Way saying, Shut up, wife. And this is the interpretation of thereof. Now the sons of men, this is Ha'adam's seed. This is what we're talking about, Ha'adam's seed. We first saw the Ha'adam's seed at the Tower of Babel. It was Ha'adam's seed that was building the Tower of Babel. Now Ha'adam's seed give me 4 pieces of silver. When I interpret other men's dream, they give me 4 pieces of silver, which is my charge for interpreting dreams. And of thee only I require 3 pieces of silver. I'll give you a deal. And the man was provoked at the words of Hadad, and he cried bitterly, and he brought Hadad to Sarak, the judge of Sodom. Even the judges are corrupt in these cities. Remember, they're the lawmakers and judges. The Elohim. And the man laid his cause before Sarak. And when Hadad replied, saying, It is not so, but thus the matter stands, the judge said to the traveler, This man Hadad telleth thee truth, for he is famed in the cities for the accurate interpretation of dreams. And the man cried at the word of the judge, and he said, Not so, my Adonai, my master. For it was in the day that I gave him the cord and mantle was on my ass, in order to put them in his house. And they both disputed before the judge, the one saying, Thus the matter was, and the other declaring otherwise. And Hadad said to the man, Give me 4 pieces of silver. Now he's not going to give him a discount, that I charge for my interpretation of dreams. I will not make any allowance. And give me the expenses of the 4 meals that thou didst eat in my house. And the man said to Hadad, Truly I will pay thee for what I ate in thy house. Only give me my cord and mantle, which thou didst conceal in thy house. And Hadad replied before the judge, and said to the man, Did I not tell the interpretation of the dream? The cord means that thy day shall be prolonged like a cord, and the mantle that thou wilt have a vineyard in which thou shalt plant all kinds of fruit trees. This is the proper interpretation of the dream. Now give me my 4 pieces of silver that I require as compensation, for I will make thee no allowance. And the man cried at the word of Hadad, and they both quarreled before the judge. And the judge gave orders to his servants, who drove them rashly out of the house. The judge didn't even make a judgment. He just drove them out. Well, he did say that he spoke truly. And they went away, quarreling from the judge. When the people of Sodom heard them, they gathered about them, and they exclaimed against the stranger, and they drove him rashly from the city. And the man continued his journey upon his ass with bitterness of soul and lamenting and weeping. This is what Yahovah is hearing. These kinds of people who have been mistreated. You know what? I had everything stolen from me when my woman decided that she did not want to keep Torah. She did not want to follow Yahovah's ways. And the judge, in that case, took me, threw me in jail, stole everything that I had. my house, my cars, my friends, my family, my wife, and my children. Oh, Yehovah, hear my cry. Nothing has changed. We live in a world just like this one. And while he was going along the way, he wept at what happened to him in the corrupt city of Sodom. When my family was taken away for 2 years, all I had to do was think about them, and I would be sobbing for hours at the loss of my family because of what these judges have done. Nothing's changed. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. But you say this is new. No, it's already been. This business about Sodom and the destruction of Sodom is nothing more than a shadow picture of what's going to happen in the last days. You can't be a citizen of Sodom and think you're going to live. It isn't going to happen. Well, this is not the end. This is the beginning of the sins of Sodom and the cities of Sodom. It goes on, chapter 19. And the cities of Sodom had 4 judges to 4 cities. And these were their names. Sarak, we just met him. He's a jerk. In the city of Sodom. Notice, these are all men. Ha! We got lady judges now. It's worse. Men wearing women's clothes. Women wearing men's clothes. We've got women doing men's jobs. It's far worse. It's worse. Women in the army. Women judges. Women leading men. Oh, I got to show you something. Let's go to Isaiah. I think it's 3:12. 3:12. No, Isaiah 3. Got to do it this way. 3:12. Yeah. As for my people, infants are their oppressors, and women rule over them. Oh, my people, those who lead you cause you to err and destroy the way of your paths. This is what we're talking about with Sodom. What was the sin of Sodom? We're going to see it at the end of this presentation. This is part of it. Children, infants are their oppressors. We're not talking about kids. We're talking about men who have no maturity. And women rule over them. They're heads of corporations, heads of businesses. Women leading men never is to happen. You lead, you're a woman. Women don't lead men. There are no women who are supposed to be pastors. Oh my goodness. It goes on and on and on. I'm trying to help you see how we are just like Sodom. Let's continue. It gets worse. They haven't killed anybody yet. Now they're going to kill people. And the cities of Sodom had 4 judges to the 4 cities. And these were their names: Sarak of the city of Sodom, Sharkad of Gomorrah, Zavnak of Admah, and Manan of Zeboim. And Eliezer, they didn't do Zor. And Eliezer, Abram's servant, applied to them different names. And he converted. This is Eliezer. I think this is supposed to be humorous. I don't see the humor in it. Eliezer, the servants. He applied different names, and he converted Sarak to it doesn't even matter. I don't even understand what it is. And by desire of the 4 judges, the people of Sodom and Gomorrah had beds erected in the streets of the city. And if a man came, if a man came to these places, they laid hold of him. The ladies didn't do the traveling, and brought him to one of the beds, and by force made him lie in them. And as he lay down, 3 men would stand at his head, and 3 men at his feet, and measure him by the length of the bed. And if the man was less than the bed, these 6 men would stretch him at each end. And when he cried out to them, they would not answer him. Sounds like a rack, doesn't it? You know what a rack is? They tie you to the rack and they stretch you. And if he was longer than the bed, they would draw together the bedsides of the bed at each end until the man had reached the gates of death. And he continued to cry out to them, but they would not answer him, saying, Thus shall it be done to the man that cometh to our land. And when the men heard these things that the people of the cities of Sodom did, they refrained from coming there. And when a poor man came to their land, they would give him silver and gold. What nice people. And cause a proclamation in the city not to give him a morsel of bread to eat. So here's a man, silver and gold in his pockets, starving to death. And if the stranger should remain there some days and die from hunger, not having been able to obtain a morsel of bread, then at his death all the people of the city would come and take their silver and gold which they had given him. And those that could recognize the silver and gold which they had given him took it back. And at his death they also stripped him of his garments and would fight about them. And he that prevailed over his neighbor took them. So the strong is the one who's getting the most. Sounds like the world today, doesn't it? They would after that carry him and bury him under the shrubs in the desert. So they did all the days to anyone who came to them and died in their land. And in the course of time, Sarah sent Eliezer to Sodom to see Lot and inquire of his welfare. Remember, who's Lot to Sarah? His brother, her brother, that's right. And Eliezer sent to Sodom, and he met a man of Sodom fighting with a stranger. And the man of Sodom stripped the poor man of all his clothes and went away. And the poor man cried to Eliezer and supplicated his favor on account of what the man of Sodom had done to him. And he said to him, Why dost thou act thus to the poor man who came to thy land? And the man of Sodom answered Eliezer, saying, Is this man thy brother? Or have the people of Sodom made thee a judge this day, that thou should speak about this man? What's he to you? And Eliezer strove with the man of Sodom on account of the poor man. And when Eliezer reproached to recover the poor man's clothes from the man of Sodom, he hastened and with a stone smote Eliezer in the forehead. Eliezer, Abram's top servant, has been struck in the forehead. And the blood flowed copiously from Eliezer's forehead. And when the man saw the blood, he caught hold of Eliezer, saying, Give me my hire. Oh, no. Give me my hire for having rid thee of this bad blood that was in thy forehead. For such is the custom and the law of our land. You know, in our land, all you have to do is have a good argument. The one who gets the best argument is the one who wins. The one who's paying off the judge is the one who wins. This is the custom, the takana, and the law, the Torah of our land. And Eliezer said to him, Thou hast wounded me and required me to pay thee hire? And Eleazar would not hearken to the words of the man of Sodom. And the man laid hold of Eleazar and brought him to Shakra, the judge of Sodom. This is the fake name. Remember, it was Sarak, the judge of Sodom. So now it's Shakra. This is the name that Eleazar gave him. And the man spoke to the judge, saying, I beseech thee, Adonai, my master, thus has this man done. For I smote him with a stone, that the blood flowed from his forehead, and he was unwilling to give me my hire. Shame on him. And the judge said to Eleazar, This man speaketh truth to thee. Give him his hire, for this is the custom of our land. And Eleazar heard the words of the judge, and he lifted up a stone and smote the judge. And the stone struck on his forehead, and the blood flowed copiously from the forehead of the judge. And Eleazar said, If this is then the custom of your land, give unto this man what I should have given him, for this has been thy decision. Thou didst decree it. It says, and Eleazar left the man of Sodom with the judge, and he went away. That's another example. Now there's another example. Look at this. And when the kings of Elam made war, this is actually a replay from chapter 14 of Genesis. And when the kings of Elam made war, remember the kings of Elam was Chedorlaomer, Nimrod, and two others, Tidal and one other guy. I always like to try and get that other guy. I can't get him right now. And they took Lot captive with his property. And when it was told to Abram, he went and made war with the kings of Elam, and he recovered from their hands all the property of Lot, as well as the property of Sodom. And at that time, Lot's woman bore him a daughter. He called her name Peltith, saying, because Elohim has delivered him and his whole household from the kings of Elam. And Peltith, daughter of Lot, grew up, and one of the men of Sodom took her for his woman. And a poor man came into the city to seek a maintenance. And he remained in the city some days. And all the people of Sodom caused a proclamation of their customs not to give this man a morsel of bread to eat until he dropped dead upon the earth. And they did so. This is their custom. This is their orders. Everybody's got to do this. And Peltith, the daughter of Lot, saw this man lying in the street, starved with hunger, and no one would give him anything to keep him alive. And he was just upon the point of death. And her soul was filled with pity. This is the daughter of Lot. She's had some training on account of the man. And she fed him secretly with bread for many days. And the soul of the man was revived. For when she went forth to fetch water, she would put the bread in the water pitcher. And when she came to the place where the poor man was, she took the bread from the pitcher and gave it to him. So she did many days. And the people of Sodom, we're talking about the men of Sodom and Gomorrah, wondered how this man could bear starvation for so many days. And they said to each other, this can only be that he eats and drinks, for no man can bear starvation for this many days, or live as this man has, without even his countenance changing. And 3 men concealed themselves, Enoshim, concealed themselves in a place where the poor man was stationed, to know who it was that brought him bread to eat. And Peltith, daughter of Lot, went that day to fetch water. And she put bread in her pitcher of water, and she went to draw water by the poor man's place. And she took the bread from the pitcher and gave it to the poor man, and he ate it. And the three men saw what Peltice did to the poor man. And they said to him, "It is thou that hast supported him, and therefore has he not starved, nor changed in appearance, nor died like the rest." And the three men went out of the place in which they were concealed. Then they seized Peltice, and the bread which was in the poor man's hand, they took it. And they took Peltice, brought her before their judges. And they said to them, "Thus did she do, and it is she who supplied the poor man with bread. Therefore did he not die all this time. Now therefore declare us the punishment due this woman for having transgressed our law." Who's this woman? Lot's daughter. And the people of Sodom and Gomorrah assembled and kindled a fire in the street of the city. And they took the woman and cast her into the fire, and she was burned to ashes. Here's another story. And in the city of Admah, there was a woman whom they did the like. What did they do to her? I'm glad you asked. For a traveler came into the city of Admah to abide there all night, with the intention of going home in the morning. And he sat opposite the door of the house of a young woman's father to remain there, as the sun had set when he had reached that place. And the young woman saw him sitting by the door of the house. And he asked her for a drink of water, and she gave. And she said to him, "Who art thou?" And he said, "I was this day going on the road, and reached here when the sun set. So I will abide here all night, and in the morning I will arise early and continue my journey." And the young woman went into the house, fetched the man bread and water to eat and drink. And this affair became known to the people of Admah. And they assembled and brought the young woman before the judges, that they should judge her for this act of kindness. And the judge said, "The judgment of death must pass upon this woman, because she transgressed our law. And this therefore is the decision concerning her." And the people of the cities assembled and brought out the young woman, anointed her with honey, from the head to foot, as the judge had decreed. And they placed her before a swarm of bees, which were then in their hives. And the bees flew upon her and stung her, that her whole body swelled. And the young woman cried out on account of the bees. But no one took notice of her or pitied her. And her cries ascended to heaven. There it is. I will go down and see whether it's true. Yeah, I think this is it right here. Nope, this is not it. We're going to get to that in a second. And Jehovah was provoked at this, and at all the works of the city of Sodom. For they had what? Abundance of food, had tranquility amongst them, and still would not sustain the poor and the needy. And in those days their evil doings became great before Jehovah. Well, look what it says in Ezekiel. Look, this was the iniquity of your sister Sodom. Oh, man. You know, this is really quite amazing. This was the iniquity of your sister Sodom. Whose sister are we talking about? She and her daughter had pride. Who's her daughter? Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim. Had pride, fullness of food, abundance of idleness. Neither did she strengthen the hand of the poor or the needy. And they were haughty and committed abominations before me. They took each other's wives and daughters. Therefore I took them away as I saw fit Folks, we are doing all the same things right now. Who were these messengers? We're now going to turn to Genesis 19, 12:32. We're not going to make it through Genesis 19, but we'll get a start. Let's go there. It says, now the two messengers came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he rose to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground. Lot knows these men. Again, I think it's Shem and Eber. Let me read to you what I've got on the side here. It says, the two messengers came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was in the gates. Lot was in the gate. Okay, who sits in the gate of the city?
The elders and judges.
The Elohim of the land of the city sit in the gate of the city. The lawmakers and the judges sit in the gates. And the two messengers came to Sodom at evening. And Lot was in the gate and saw them and rose up to meet them. And he bowed himself with his face toward the ground. I put, these messengers are Yahovah's Shalakim, his sent ones. And if there is a shadow picture of two witnesses, this is it right here. You know what? You won't see two witnesses anywhere in Torah, law or the prophets. But right here, I think we see the two witnesses. Folks, you know what? I heard this forever. Two witnesses, two witnesses, two witnesses, two witnesses. I've heard it so many times. I forget what a witness is. I will go down and see if it's true. And if not, I will know. He's sending witnesses. What does Yahovah say? Look what he says. This is Genesis. No, actually, no. I'm gonna read this to you because it's pertinent. And Yahovah said, this is the last chapter. And Yahovah said, because of the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah, now we know what they're outcrying about is great. Because of their sin is grave. Yes, they're committing adultery. They're stealing. They're taking other men's daughters. I will go down and see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry against it that has come to me. And if not, I will know. Well, now, look what Yahovah says about witnesses. You know, why didn't I think, when it says two witnesses, why didn't I ever think that they were witnesses? Is it just a name, the two witnesses? I think that's what we do. We don't understand what their job is. This is not a name, this is a job. They're Yahovah's witnesses. And these are men who know the difference between sin and not sin. Good and evil, light and darkness, bitter, sweet. They know. Because they're mature in Yahovah's word. They can teach it to others. But they know sin when they see sin. Well, now look what Yahovah says about witnesses and killing a man. Whoever is deserving of death shall be put to death on the testimony of what? 2 or 3 witnesses. He shall not be put to death on the testimony of 1 witness. My husband committed adultery. I saw him. Or my wife committed adultery. I saw her. Well, did you see her or did anybody else see her? 2 witnesses. But you know what? If your woman did it, you can take her to the temple. Have her drink that liquid. If her If her stomach swells and her thigh rots, you know she was guilty. Woman can't do that. The hands of the witnesses will be the first against him to put him to death. Hear that? Got to have two witnesses. And the two witnesses, the ones that saw it, will be the first to throw the stones. And afterwards, the hands of all the people. Oh, the lady people? Do ladies stone men? No, 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 no. We don't get it. It's not about lady people, it's about men people. So you shall put away the evil from among you. The witnesses are men. One witness shall not rise against a man. Oh my goodness. Did you hear that? It doesn't say one witness shall not rise against a person. Gee, am I preaching badly? Because I seem to be losing people, not gaining people today. What is up with that? One witness shall not rise against a man. The word is ish. There's no lady ishes. Concerning any iniquity or any sin that he commits. Remember, if you have a woman in your life who's doing something egregious, the sin is on you, not her. This is why you can't keep a woman in your life, and you got to give her a bill of divorcement. She's bringing sin on you. Now, there are times when women are stoned, but it's the man who caused the problem. She's just collateral damage. He took a woman who was married. It was caught. And now they're both going to be killed by the people who caught them. 2 or 3 witnesses. One witness shall not rise against an ish concerning any iniquity or any sin that he commits. By the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, the matter shall be established. This is what we're talking about. These messengers, Melachim, messengers, are Shalakim, sent ones, sent by Yahovah to act on his behalf. He is going to use them as his witnesses. And then, remember, he's they are he. His shalak, they're him. He's going to throw the first stone. Maybe I should say the first stones. Like thousands that are going to be thrown on Sodom at one time. And we're not talking stones, we're talking flaming stones. What was that called? Brimstone. Yeah, this stuff doesn't go out. It burns and burns and burns. It burns through metal, it burns through everything. Okay, verse 2. And he said, "Hear now, my masters." He called them lords. Same word, Adonai. Only this time they translate it as lords. I don't like that word lords. I try not to use the word lords, even for Adonai. Adonai is masters, my master. Okay, but here they're calling them or translating it as plural. But it's still the singular. That's why I say I think it should have been plural in 18 as well, when he talked about the 3 sent ones, the Enoshim, the 3 messengers. They always want to call it angels. You know what? Stay away from these loaded words, these Christian words. Yahovah is not about doing things. I always forget what I want to call this. What should I say? supernatural, ethereal. We think spiritual or superstition. There's so much of that. We think we're modern, but we're still believing in the virgin birth. We're still believing in all kinds of nonsense that just is not. It's not in Jehovah's word. Well, making these angels Yahovah is a misnomer. When he sends messengers, they're men who are sent. Can he send an angel? I suppose he can. But more than likely, it's men. And in this case, we're talking about Enoshim, men with feet and hands. Okay, this is not what we're talking about. Ezekiel, the first chapter of Ezekiel, talks about angels. He describes them totally different. They don't have arms and legs. No, they got something completely different. He calls them, my lords, please turn in to your servant's house and spend the night. Wash your feet. They have feet. Jehovah doesn't have feet. Then you shall rise early and go on your way. And they said, no, but we will spend the night in the open square. They're the witnesses. They want to see what's going on. But he insisted. Lot insisted strongly. So they turned to him and entered his house. Now look what he gives them. It says, then he made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate it. Unleavened bread. How many people say, hey, come on over, I just made a new batch of unleavened bread. You'll love it. No. Why is he having unleavened bread? Because it's Passover. That's right. Sodom was destroyed on a Passover. Or at least during the feast. I think it was the first day of unleavened bread, right after the Passover meal, that evening. Well, that morning. Let's talk about that for a moment. Passover seems to be followed by catastrophic events in Torah. Let me give you some examples. We know that at this one, Passover, the day after the time of life, that Sodom was destroyed. The messengers brought the righteous man, Lot, out of the city before they died. He tried to deliver others. We'll see that later on in this chapter. Tried to save his sons. Asked, did you have any sons? Do you have any son-in-laws? Do you have any daughters? Let's get them. Seemed like they were talking about circumcised men, by the way, in the word that they used for sons, son-in-laws. But that's one time. So now we have Egypt. We had a Passover, and then we left Egypt. And what happened just a few days after we left Egypt? Pharaoh and all his armed forces were drowned in the sea. Then another 40 years later, 42 years later, we had another Passover. We had just entered the land of Canaan. We circumcised all of our men, slaughtered our goats and our lambs, had Passover, and then it appears for 7 days we walked around the city. What's that?
Jericho fell down.
Yeah, Jericho fell down. Jericho was what? It was the gateway to the promised land. It was the guardian city, strong, fortified, and its walls came tumbling down. It was the beginning of the end for the land of Canaan. Right after Passover. When was the flood? When did Yahovah send the flood? That's right, Carrie. It was right after second Passover. Second Passover would have been the 14th day of the second month. And it was the 17th day of the second month that the rains began to fall. Again, the beginning of the end. It's going to be on Passover in these last days that the nation, the spiritual nation, the spiritual seed, men, Ezra men, are going to be born at a Passover. Right now, men are being born at the Passover, or renewing their covenant at the Passover each year, which I've done for 9 years now. But I think right now we're not waiting for Yahovah. He's waiting for a certain amount of men. Some people might argue 144,000. That's a New Testament number. I'm not going to go there. But I use that number because that's what people search for in the search engine optimization, the search engines that they use, Google and Bing and Yahoo, those kinds of search engines. So I use that number. But I'm not committed to that number. We're talking about Yahovah's servants that he's raising up in the earth, Ezra men. When he has a specific number of Ezra men, that's going to be the day that a true nation is going to be born in a day. The following Shavuot is going to be the day that the 144,000, the servants, these servants are acknowledged in the earth. They're born without anybody knowing it. How can a nation be born in a day? But at Shavuot, they're going to have pillars of fire over their head. That's the banner in the wilderness that people are going to be coming to. So all this is related to the beginning of the end. When you see those banners, you ain't one of Yahovah's people, you know you're screwed. You better make some serious changes that day, because you may not have many more days that you can make changes. That is going to be the beginning of the end. And it's going to start with a Passover and then a Shavuot. To say any of these feasts of Yahovah are done away with is a deadly mistake. They're all important. You're not covered at Yom Kippurim if you didn't become an Ezra at Passover, men. You don't dwell in booths at Sukkot if you're not an Ezra man. It starts with Passover. Oh, the Catholic Church has done everything it can to turn you away from Yahovah's statutes, judgments, and ordinances, from Yahovah himself, by giving you this modern day golden calf called Yeshua, Jesus. Oh, I know, I make lots of people mad. Yahovah says, even I am Elohim, and besides me there is no other, nor shall there be after me. Even I am the Savior. Check it out. Isaiah 43, 9 and 10, or 10 and 11. It's there. Who do we want to make the Savior? Jesus. Man, you're goners. If you're going to do that, don't go after the modern day golden calf. Learn, if you're a woman, learn to follow your man. If you're a man, leave the kingdom of your birth and learn to follow only Yahovah. That's where the safety is, because that was his created purpose for the man and for his woman. They're making unleavened bread. Okay? Okay, watch what's going to happen. How are we doing on time? 12:52. Wow, this time goes fast. We're going to go over this again next week. I'm going to have to. I got to start from the beginning. Now, before they lay down, the men, the Anoshim of the city. No, this is the men of the city, the Anoshim of the city. The men of Sodom, both young and old. All the people, we're talking about the men from every quarter surrounded the house. What do you do on the Passover? You stay in your house, don't you? These are men who are outside their house, and even more so, trying to kill. First, they want to sodomize the messengers. Then they decide they're going to try and kill Lot. Watch what happens. Now, before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both young, old and young, all the people, the men people of every quarter surrounded the house. And they called to Lot and said to him, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may know them." Know them. They add the word carnally. But this is what we're talking about. They want to sodomize them. So Lot went out to them through the doorway, shut the door behind him, and said, "Please, who are you talking about? Sisterin? No, please, my brethren, do not do so wickedly, taking another man as a man. You shall not lie with a man as you lie with a woman." But there are no ladies out tonight. These are men, men, men. Terry, I did that for you. Now look what happens. "See now, I have 2 daughters who have not known a man. Please let me bring them out to you, and you may do to them as you wish. Only do nothing to these men, since this is the reason they have come under the shadow of my roof, to keep them safe. Because I know what you're like, you guys." Well, look at this. This wickedness that the men are doing, or this is wickedness that the men are doing. Okay, they're trying to take other men. They want to sodomize it. They've been sodomizing the women, or they've been taking their women, each other's women, all day long, and their daughters. Okay, the women and the daughters, they went back home, but these men are on a high. They want more, and now they're going to man flesh. Men are going to man flesh, and that's even worse. What does he say? Which is less wicked, to take the men, or to give his daughters? I put, may we never have to be in this kind of situation. But Lot is trying to make the better of the situation. At least taking his daughters is not sin. It's not. He's given them to him. It's not sin. In a sense, he's making his daughters whores. We saw in Yasher, these men were taking other men's women and daughters all day long. They don't want them. What do they say? And they said, "Stand back." Then they said, "This one came in to stay here." He's talking about Lot. These are the men talking about Lot. "This one came to stay here." And he keeps acting as a judge. Actually, that's really, here's what it actually says. And they said, "Stand back." Then they said, "This one came in to stay here," and he is judging as a judge. One is a verb, same root, shafat, but one is the verb and the other is a noun. Judging as a judge. "Now we will deal worse with you than with them." We're going to do worse to you than we were going to do to the messengers. So they pressed hard against the man Lot and came near to break down the door. Look at this. This is Amos. It says, they hate the one who rebukes in the gate, and they abhor the one who speaks uprightly. You know what? I have to laugh. My roommates are always complaining about me. I manage a house. And in this house, I have 6 other roommates. 6 other roommates. And the owner of the house is constantly getting complaints. They don't like Michael. Michael's mean to them. Michael holds them accountable. Michael shines the light of righteousness in their eyes. I had a guy that tell me the other day, the one thing I don't like about you, Michael, he's telling me to my face, the one thing that I don't like about you, Michael, you don't believe in Jesus. Oh my, we're so deluded. I used to be just like you, but I learned Jehovah's word. No, they don't like the man who sits in the gate. They don't like the man who speaks uprightly. And this is what's going on in Sodom. Lot is the righteous man who speaks uprightly, shines the light in their eyes. They don't like it. We got to get rid of this man. Oh, here. Let's go. We're on 19:9. We're done anyway. Let me make this the last verse. Talking about righteous men being rejected by unrighteous men. I'm going to show you 2 verses in closing. Let's go first to Proverbs 29. Right at the bottom. It says, an unjust man is an abomination to the righteous, and he who is upright in the way is an abomination to the wicked. Now go to Isaiah 57. Isaiah 57, 1 and 2. No, 1. The righteous perishes, and no man takes it to heart. Merciful men are taken away, while no one considers that the righteous is taken away from the evil. You know what? I've been thrown out of synagogues. I've been thrown out of churches. But they don't understand that I was trying to help them. I was seeking after righteousness. And they get rid of me thinking they're getting rid of the evil. But what does it say? Well, no one considers that the righteous is taken away from the evil. My woman thought she got rid of her wicked man. But she doesn't know that I was set free from her to follow Yehovah holy. I could not teach you the things that I'm teaching you today and every day had that not happened to me. It was the most painful thing that ever happened to me. But I'm so grateful to Yehovah that it did, because it set me free to follow only him. All right. Well, hey, thank you for joining me today. Father, please give us eyes that see. Help us learn to look at your words differently, to see deeper meanings and deeper understandings so that we can act with wisdom. Oh, Yehovah, we need to learn your created purpose for each of our lives. Help us. Teach us today. We love you so much. Hey, thanks for joining me. We'll see you next week. Bye, all.